Maya James tugged the strap of her old backpack higher on her shoulder as she walked down the cracked sidewalk that led to Wilson's auto garage. The morning sun was already burning through her thin hoodie, and she could smell the gasoline and motor oil before she even saw the rusty sign swinging above the wide garage doors. She stopped at the entrance and checked the folded flyer in her pocket one last time. It was just a simple summer job ad. Part-time help wanted, no experience needed, apply in person. But she knew better. In a garage like this, you needed more than paper. She stepped inside and felt the air shift from the warm street to the heavy, oil-slicked shadows of the shop. Old tires were stacked against the walls, metal shelves held greasy tools, and country music played low on a battered radio near a dented red toolbox. A man in a dark work shirt looked up from under a lifted pickup truck, squinting at her like she'd stepped into the wrong building. Maya's fingers twitched at her sides. She could practically hear her father's voice telling her not to let them see her nerves. She cleared her throat and asked for the owner. Chuck Wilson was leaning against a battered workbench, wiping his hands on a rag that had probably been dirty since the 90s. He was big and broad, with grey hair that curled under his cap. He eyed Maya from her muddy sneakers to her tired ponytail and asked what she wanted. She told him she was here about the flyer. He laughed. Not mean exactly, but enough that the two older mechanics near the open bay door laughed too. One of them muttered something about kids these days and went back to stirring his stale coffee. Maya didn't move. She told Chuck she could help around the garage, do oil changes, clean up parts, maybe learn something too if they'd let her. Chuck smirked, glanced at the other guys, and asked if she even knew what an alternator did. She said yes. It kept the battery charged and the engine running right. He raised an eyebrow at her answer, but still crossed his arms like he was waiting for her to leave. She said she learned working with her dad. That got him to pause, just for a second, but then he barked out a sharp laugh and pointed across the shop. Near the back bay, under harsh white lights, sat an old green Chevy truck, its hood popped and wires dangling like someone gave up halfway through. Chuck jerked his chin at it and told her if she could get that engine running, she could stay. Or if not, she'd better find a different summer job. Maya looked at the truck and felt her father's ghost sitting on her shoulder. He used to fix engines just like this one, late at night, explaining each part with hands that smelled of steel and oil. She nodded once. Chuck shrugged and told the others to watch her waste time. She set her backpack down next to a battered tool cart and pulled her hair into a tighter knot. She rolled up the sleeves of her old flannel shirt and bent over the engine bay, steadying her breath. The garage fell quiet, except for the buzz of the radio and the distant thrum of traffic outside. She could feel the men's eyes on her back, half mocking, half curious. She ignored them. Instead, she listened to the engine's silence. Her dad always said engines talk to you if you knew how to listen. She checked the battery first, then the distributor cap, then the coil. Her fingers worked fast but gentle, feeling for loose wires, sticky plugs, and the hidden damage that told stories about the truck's last 20 years. She asked for a wrench. The youngest mechanic, a guy not much older than her, hesitated before handing it over. Their fingers brushed. He raised his eyebrows when she thanked him like she belonged there. She cracked a stubborn bolt, tightened a line, and swapped out a corroded plug with one she found in a drawer of forgotten spares. She moved the way her father taught her. Fix what's broken, patch what you can, test and trust your gut. Chuck leaned on the workbench again, arms crossed tighter now. He called out that she was wasting her time, that even his senior guys hadn't bothered with that old wreck because it wasn't worth the labor. Maya ignored him. She traced the fuel line back to a tiny leak and patched it with tape for now, enough to get the old beast to cough awake. She wiped her forehead with the back of her hand, streaking grease into her hair. She could almost feel her dad's hand on her shoulder, nodding, telling her she'd found the problem most would overlook. When she was ready, she called for the keys. Chuck tossed them at her like he was throwing a bone to a stray. She caught them, slid into the cracked leather driver's seat, and took one slow breath. She turned the key halfway. The dashboard lights flickered weakly. She whispered a quick promise to her dad that she wouldn't flood it. Then she turned the key the rest of the way. For a heartbeat there was nothing. Then the old truck coughed once, twice, then rumbled into a shaky, throaty idle. She felt the vibration under her hands like her father's heartbeat. The garage went quiet except for that rumble. The other mechanics stared, half smiling despite themselves. The youngest one let out a low whistle. Chuck pushed off the workbench, walked over slowly, and peered under the hood like maybe she'd hidden another engine in there. He asked her where she learned to do that. Maya wiped her hands on her flannel, tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, and looked him dead in the eye. She told him her dad was Red James, the man who'd kept half this town's cars alive when Chuck was just starting out. Chuck's mouth opened, but no sound came out at first. The other mechanics froze too, like they'd all heard a name they hadn't expected. Red James wasn't just another grease monkey from back in the day. He'd been the kind of mechanic who could fix anything, who once rebuilt an entire transmission on the side of the road in a snowstorm when Chuck's own truck broke down. Maya saw recognition dawn in Chuck's eyes as he remembered late nights, cheap coffee, and her father's laughter echoing off the concrete walls of his first shop. She could see him swallowing his pride. Chuck looked at her hands, small, young, but smudged with grease in the same way Red's used to be. He asked if she was really Red's kid, or just using the name to score points. Maya didn't flinch. She told him about the garage behind their old house, about the times she'd fallen asleep under the workbench, wrapped in an oily blanket, while her dad rebuilt an engine for a neighbor who couldn't pay. She told him how her father taught her how to listen to a machine's heartbeat before trusting a manual. Her voice didn't shake once as she spoke. The youngest mechanic, who'd handed her the wrench, let out a small laugh under his breath, like he couldn't believe Chuck ever doubted her. Maya stepped away from the truck, engine humming behind her, and met Chuck's stare head-on. She didn't gloat, didn't smirk, just waited. He cleared his throat and told her she could come back tomorrow, same time. She asked if that meant she got the job. He scratched the back of his neck and muttered that she'd already proved she could fix what his best guys hadn't bothered with. The other mechanics exchanged looks that weren't quite smiles yet. Maya grabbed her backpack and zipped it up, feeling her dad's old patch on the strap brush against her knuckles. She could almost hear him laughing somewhere in the back of her mind, saying she did good. The youngest mechanic asked her if she wanted help wiping down the Chevy's tools. She shook her head, saying she'd clean up her own mess, just like her dad taught her. She put the wrench back exactly where she found it, tightened the drawer, and checked the oil rag twice before tossing it in the bin. Then she moved like she belonged here. Chuck lingered near the garage door, arms crossed again, but not so defensive this time. He asked if she planned to stay for the whole summer, or if she'd bolt when it got hard. Maya told him she'd stay as long as the work was honest. She needed the money for school, but more than that, she needed to prove that Red James's legacy wasn't buried with him. Chuck nodded once, grunted something about starting wages, and told her to show up early. The morning guys wouldn't wait for her. She promised she'd be there before the first cup of burnt coffee hit the counter. As she stepped outside, the sun had shifted behind drifting clouds, but the heat still bounced off the concrete lot. She felt sweat drying on her neck, her fingers stained with the same oil smell that used to cling to her dad's flannel shirts. She walked past a row of old cars lined up for tune-ups and oil changes, her shoes scuffing the gravel. She caught her reflection in a dusty car window, hair tied back, cheeks streaked with grime, eyes tired but stubborn. For the first time in months, her shoulders felt a little lighter under her backpack. At the bus stop across the street, she dug out her phone to text her mom that she'd be home late tomorrow too. Her mom had worried about her wasting time on garage dreams when she should focus on scholarships, but Maya knew this was her way forward. And not forever maybe, but enough for now. Enough to stand on her own 2 feet, enough to hear an engine purr under her hands and feel her father's lessons alive again in every click of a socket wrench or hiss of an air compressor. She smiled when the bus finally rounded the corner. When the doors swung open, she climbed the steps 2 at a time and dropped her backpack on the seat beside her. She leaned her forehead against the rattling window as the garage faded behind her. The roar of the bus engine made her think about the old Chevy, the spark plug she'd swapped, the distributor cap her dad would have fixed the same exact way. She whispered a thank you under her breath, not sure if it was for herself or for her father, or maybe for Chuck, for daring her at all. She felt the city hum past, alive with promise. Tomorrow would come early. She'd wear the same flannel, tie her hair back the same way, and walk into Wilson's like she'd been there forever. She knew the other guys would test her, see if she could hold her own with bigger jobs, tougher bolts, heavier parts. She knew she'd have to prove herself twice every day, once because she was young, and once because she wasn't what they expected under a grease-slicked hood. But she'd done it once, and she'd do it again. After all, engines didn't care who you were if you knew how to listen right.